My old Kentucky home. Home of the Kentucky Derby. Usually in May, but this year it was run in September because, the world is upside down right now. Home of Kentucky basketball and U of L. Sorry, guys. Go Cats! I'll have to see how many subscribers I lost after that. Sorry. It's home of the world's best bourbon and history's most bonkers gubernatorial election. I really wanted an excuse to say gubernatorial. That's right. Kentucky had one of the most explosive elections for governor that resulted in assassination. The majority of my research today is coming from explorekentuckyhistory.ky.gov. That's not a plug or anything, but they do a really great job. It's one of the best state historical sites I've ever seen. The reason that this race is so crazy is that not only did it end in an assassination, the results were so contentious, the opposing candidate tried to raise a militia. It's finger-licking Kentucky history on today's History Talk. Meet William Goebel, who, as far as, politicians of the 1890s go, is not difficult to look at. I mean, he's got the comb over. The year is 1899, and Goebel, who is a lawyer, is running against William S. Taylor. Taylor is a Republican, and Goebel's a Democrat. Goebel has won the Democratic nomination for governor, and will be facing off with William S. Taylor. But the thing is, these guys are kind of neck and neck in terms of the polls. And as it turns out, things get a little crazy. Because during the initial vote count, Taylor is declared the winner by 2,000 votes. There's a Democratic majority in the General Assembly who contested the result, which leads to this series of rioting in Frankfort, Kentucky. Taylor's expecting to be inaugurated. By the time the new year rolls around, Kentucky still isn't sure who their governor is. Somebody decides to fix the problem. It's January 30th. My birthday! 1900. I wasn't born yet, obviously. And William Goebel is walking out in front of the Kentucky Capitol, or at least the old Kentucky Capitol building, which is actually still there today. Out of one of the windows, facing the courtyard, a shot rings out. Goebel is carried into a nearby house to be taken care of, and Taylor, acting governor, comes out and tells everybody to calm down. He calls the militia out and orders the legislature to take the week off to see what happens. But they don't really do that. In a very shady move, supporters of Goebel managed to invalidate enough votes to declare Goebel the actual winner, and they take Taylor out of the office of governor. Goebel is sworn in on his deathbed on January 31st, the day after he's been shot. He dies 3 days later, becoming the only American governor to be assassinated in office. And that's not the end of the story. In that brief time, while Goebel was lying there dying of a gunshot wound, he did manage to create one proclamation, which was to counter the proclamation that Taylor had put out, which, had removed the legislature and removed the militia. So now what? A lot of people didn't like Goebel, but they liked his lieutenant governor more, and the lieutenant governor became governor, so that kind of stopped some of the infighting, which is kind of sad, but now we had to look for who did it, and everybody had some suspicions. I don't know. Maybe the guy he was trying to steal the election from? Taylor did not make this any better by fleeing to Indianapolis, Indiana after Goebel died. Now, of course, he was worried about being indicted, which, yeah, you think? But then 16 other people were eventually indicted in the assassination. 3 accepted immunity to testify. But justice isn't really getting served. The judges are all Goebel supporters. So if you're trying to keep score, his crew was trying to steal the election. He won, so they say. He gets shot, but hangs around long enough to see that he is made governor. He flees the state, and now there are a lot of trials going on, run by pro-Goebel judges. Pro-Goebel judges. That's really hard to say. While 16 people are tried, convictions were only handed down against Taylor's Secretary of State, Caleb Powers, Henry Yahtzee, and another guy named Jim Howard. And Howard is accused of being the actual assassin, although he says he was trying to seek pardon for killing somebody in a duel that day. This is Kentucky. Duels happened. And when people started looking at the jury pool, they realized the jury pool was full of Goebel supporters. The judges were stacking the juries, so the convictions get overturned. And they go to trial again. It's a hung jury. Meanwhile, the only conviction that is sticking is Yahtzee, who's the intermediary, and he's like, I swear to God I had nothing to do with this. Finally, after much bickering, Yahtzee gets paroled, and Powers and Howard were pardoned in 1908. This case was never solved. So most historians agree that this case is just never going to get solved. Taylor fled to Indiana, and this was back in the good old days that when you were, like, accused of killing somebody, you could just cross the state line and that was the end of it. But, you know, there was one attempt to try to kidnap him to bring him back to Kentucky. It failed, though. He was indicted as being an accessory, but he was also eventually pardoned as well. Another fun part I left out of the story is the fact that this is Kentucky and everybody is armed, or was, or still is. That's from last year. And when Goebel was bleeding out from a gunshot wound, he turned around with his own gun. I guess he was going to fight back. We'll never know, but you can actually go to the Kentucky History Museum and they have Goebel's shirt that he was wearing when he was shot. A memorial has also been set up to honor the guy who was governor for less than a week.